Okay. So a little bit of background onto the inclusion grants. So we launched the first round, which was a pilot in 2023. So that ran between January and December. We awarded funding to 6 innovative strategic projects across Greater Manchester that encouraged, embedded or increased good practice around one or more of the 4 recommendations that came from the Greater Manchester Mental Wellbeing and Disability Report. So that was done in the previous years to the funding, which was then put together by the Integrated Care Partnership to be associated with that report. So you can read the reports online. They're on our website. And we'll also be publishing an impact summary report on the 1st of July, and I'd recommend having a read of that as well, just to see what projects were funded last year, what were their successes, and what we learned from working together as a group. You might find some really useful things for answering the application questions and for designing your project as well within those. So on to the next slide. So yeah, just a little bit of background on those reports there. So the report links are within the slides and they're also on our website. So in year 2 of the project, as in the first pilot year, the Integrated Care Partnership really wanted the funding to create change at community levels, but also at GM levels by focusing on 4 of the recommendations from the reports. So there was 20 recommendations within the GM Mental Wellbeing and Disability Report, and a group came together to look at those and decide on which of those were the best to focus on. So we came out with 4, which meant that it enabled projects to really focus, maybe build those partnerships to be having a little bit more impact working on the similar 4 strands rather than looking at those wider 20, and develop a really meaningful way to work, but also opening up that funding to more organisations to be able to apply. So yeah, I will cover those 4 strands in a minute. Next slide, Vicky, thanks. So the aim of the grants is to encourage a change of narrative around disability across Greater Manchester. So your organisation may work GM-wide, or you can work in a specific location, any of the 10 GM localities. And we're really looking for innovative projects which will encourage, embed or increase good practice around listening to deaf and or disabled people and including them in the co-creation of services, policies, practices, events and activities. Joining up services so that support is offered holistically, ensuring it's tailored to the needs and preference of the individual. Removing any one-size-fits-all approaches and improving support for deaf and or disabled people wanting to take on volunteering opportunities. So you can work on, your project can work on 1 or more of those. It's likely most projects would fit more than 1 of the 4, but 1 would be fine. So on to the next slide. In terms of eligibility criteria, we're really keen that deaf and or disabled people must be involved in all stages of development and delivery of the projects, but projects that are led by, are designed by and led by deaf and disabled people will score higher within the eligibility criteria. We really want to move away from that co-design to being led by. And as well, just to note that it is a strategic grants programme, so the grants are not for direct delivery of groups and the work has to be strategic.
All right, now we will go through sort of the process of applying for a grant. So this is just an overview of the key stages and some of the key dates. So when we'll launch on the 1st of July, so this Monday, and that's when the inquiry and eligibility form will be live. So that's the link that you'll be sent out. So once you've submitted the inquiry and eligibility form, you'll be sent the full application form. Just please note that the application form is a unique link and therefore can't be shared. The deadline for the full application form will be 12 p.m. on the 12th of August. So once this is all been completed, there'll be a panel that will assess the applications, and that will take place in the week ending the 25th of August. And you should be expect to be notified of decisions by the week ending the 6th of September. So the inquiry and eligibility form is just a short form that just sort of captures your key details. So you're just looking at sort of your basic organization details. We're looking at the understanding of the barriers that deaf and or disabled people face due to issues of accessibility and inclusion. So part of this, we will ask the percentage of your organization that is deaf and or disabled, and where in Greater Manchester your project is based, and sort of how you heard about us. It's a short, less than 10 questions form. But if you require an alternative format to the online form, please do get in touch. So then once you've submitted that form, you'll be sent automatically the application form. This is again another online form, but will be more in depth, and this will be used to assess the full eligibility criteria. We have a very supportive approach, so we can provide guidance around the forms, the process, and the questions. And again, for either the application form or the inquiry form or both, if you need an alternative format, just please get in touch. We will share our contact details at the end of this event, but we will also pop them in the chat, and you'll be sent a follow-up email with our contact details and further information about the grant once it's launched. And now I'll pass over to Helen, who will go through the application form questions.
Thanks, Vicky. Okay. So I'm going to go over the application forms. So there is a guidance document which will go through the bits that I'm mentioning now. So the one of the questions will be around the community or the communities that your organisation works with. So you may include communities of experience, identity and or place. We'd be looking for a description, the timescales and the impact the project you're proposing. So if you are successful, we will ask you to produce a delivery plan, which generally would be in like each quarter of your project. Within this answer, we're kind of really looking for you to focus on really clear to the point descriptions of your project that you're going to deliver with the funding and how it's linked to the recommendations that you've chosen. So what are the key project outcomes? Consider who will benefit and where they are based. Bearing in mind projects have a start and an end date with that delivery in between. So you could give some key delivery dates and sort of those key milestones of your project. So yeah, I guess in terms of a delivery plan, we won't ask for that unless you're successful, but it might be worth starting to think about a delivery plan per quarter when you're answering this question, because yeah, I feel like it would really help to inform that question. Something that came out of the pilot last year as well was that kind of balance of being really ambitious in your project, but actually realistic around how much time some things can take to deliver. So just thinking about timescales and how long it takes to build up relationships, especially if they're outside of the voluntary sector and their new relationships. So just being realistic really and thinking this is an ongoing throughout that year of delivery. Another example would be if you're building a group of people to come together to steer and influence the project, then you may want to recruit slightly over the numbers that you would need to be core and make decisions within that group. So for example, if you were thinking we need 5 people to make decisions, then you might want to recruit 7 or 8. It sounds like really easy, obvious things, but I guess when it's hard to get people together, and you know, it allows for people having appointments and people being ill, and then you can still keep delivering. And not that there's any issue in that. We know project delivery can sometimes slip, and that's fine. It's something we'd manage together, but it's just those little things that we found last year created additional barriers that we kind of hadn't really thought about before we'd started. So one of the other questions will be how the project's been developed and designed by deaf and or disabled people and how they will be involved within that project. So yeah, we just really want to know that your project has been designed by the people who it will impact, and that those changes will be seen by people, you know, who have actually said, yes, this is a change we need and want. So if that isn't the case, then we'd really be just looking for how it's going to be co-designed and how it's going to be co-led. So yeah, projects that are designed by and led by deaf and or disabled people will be favoured, as we're really keen to influence funders and other grants that are designed to be led by the people and communities who are benefiting from the change. Okay, next slide. There's another question around your evidence of past experience engaging with the communities that you're proposing to work with. So we just want a little bit of information, maybe some examples of successful projects and engagement that you've done with your organisation, with people within those communities. I guess you could design a brilliant project, but if you've not engaged with the community and nobody's engaging to make those changes, then it's going to less likely to be a success. So just explaining how you've engaged with the communities, and how will this in past successful projects, and how that will enable you to engage within this project. In demonstrating your understanding of the barriers that deaf and or disabled people face due to issues of accessibility and inclusion, you could describe any consultations, any surveys or focus groups that you've done with people, any groups or organisations that the project will impact. Have you spoken to them? Have you done any outreach with them? You can describe any previous research you may have undertaken to demonstrate your understanding. And you could also mention any statistical evidence or research others have done to support the need for your project. We ask as well around the evidence of the connections you have with other organisations that will engage within your proposed project. So this is just a little bit around explaining how you've worked with those people in the past, and how they're involved in the project and how successful that was. And if it's a new relationship, just any preliminary discussions that you might have before you launch your project with those organisations, just to ensure that we know that relationship can develop and can be sort of successful within your delivery. Another question is around how you will share learning and good practice. So as the funding is for strategic grants, we're really keen to know how you'll share the learning and how you will share the good practice across Greater Manchester or across your local area. But it's kind of trying to influence those organisational structures rather than just an individual or your organisation. So it's trying to share something that might be that you produce a tool or a product along the project, such as a guide or a zine or a podcast or a model of working or even an event or a webinar that you can spread that learning and share that learning, and that it can impact the wider systems and the wider policies and procedures that are put in place. So we kind of at this point really want to encourage you to think about, I guess, how you will know your project has been successful and has achieved the changes that you've set out to achieve, but also how you can share that and how other people can learn from that. The next question is just in relation to previous grant holders. So there were 6 organisations who were successful last year. So we just want to know from you a little bit of extra information. So if this is a new project, how has your previous grant impacted this new project? What did you learn? What did you gain from delivering in that year that has influenced how you will deliver this year? If it's an extension or replicates your previous project, we'd also just be asking again how you've built on that previous year's learning. I guess with it being strategic, some of the projects were kind of start and finish and wouldn't be replicated, whereas others of them you could replicate your project again, but it would be looking at what's changed, what's different, is there anything that you felt didn't work great last time or did work great and want to include? Or was there any feedback from the groups that you were working with along the way, which was all documented in all your reporting? And that's just we're just kind of asking you to let the panel know. Kathy, do you want to? Yeah, just on the last bit around the application form, it'll ask you around budget. So how much you're applying for and to add a budget breakdown. So we've asked for that in whatever format is easiest for you. Just really clear that it's for the project rather than the whole organisation. It's just the budget for this project and the amount that you're applying for. And that's everything on the application form. It feels like quite a lot as I've just gone through it. But the word counts are fairly low. We've tried to keep it to asking only the questions that we really need to know and not asking for more information than we actually need. And Vicky's going to take you through the application, some dates and some bits around the panel.
Yeah, so as said before, the application panel will meet in the week ending the 25th of August. So the panel will consist of some GMCPO staff, some staff from the Greater Manchester Integrated Care Partnership, and people with lived experience. So they'll have a look at the application forms and make decisions based against the eligibility and criteria mentioned. We'll also be looking at making sure that the grants will benefit a wide spread of people across Greater Manchester. So just to remind you that the decisions will then be expected to be notified about decisions by the week ending the 6th of September. And we will expect the projects to then begin in September 2024. And we expect the projects to be about 9 to 12 months long, with projects ending in August 2025. For the monitoring, you sort of expect sort of quarterly update reports and meetings. We will also be expecting case studies, but there will be an impact and outcomes workshop to sort of help with that, and we support the monitoring process. I think that's it at the minute, so we'll just open up for questions. So I'll stop sharing so we can see everyone as well.